And that leads me to a story by Ezekiel Kralin, who wrote, I was abducted myself by UFO aliens back in 1972. Zeke's abduction story. It was 1973 when I was newly homeless after fleeing from Columbia, Missouri after my third year in college, majoring in cultural anthropology and journalism and winding up in the SF Bay Area. I had dozed off while seated on a sofa in a spacious lounge of the UC Berkeley campus right by Sproul Plaza. I opened my eyes, reclining in something like a dentist chair, while several stunningly handsome 8-foot-tall humans dressed in white surgical attire stood around smiling down at me. He's waking up now, one said to the others, while holding in a latex-gloved hand a spindly metallic drill with a small circular saw off to one side. I felt in spectacularly good spirits, like I could leap from my chair and dance a jig, but I couldn't lift so much as a finger, I quickly discovered. I noticed a few spots of fresh blood on a white bib they must have placed on me while asleep, then raised my eyes up toward the one holding the drill, presumably the surgeon. I attempted to ask what's going on, but realized I couldn't speak either. "Hush," said the surgeon as he placed a bony, albeit surprisingly sexy finger over my lips. "You won't be able to talk or even move for several minutes yet, but don't try to stand up once you can. If you feel the least bit dizzy, wait another minute or so, please. The drugs we administered for the operation will wear off shortly." "Operation? What operation?" I queried in my own mind. Thankfully, they were telepathic, so answered promptly with a sharp but pleasant tingle somewhere deep within my prefrontal cortex, which I wanted to scratch but obviously could not. "We've begun performing special brain surgery on your species, one by one. You number among the first, Eugene. In fact, you are the first." "Oh, was that all?" I giggled with profound amusement. "By all means, complete the job if you haven't already. I love a good lobotomy. It clears the mind like nothing else." They doubled over in laughter upon hearing that, and the surgeon replied, We've always admired your razor wit, Mr. Catalano. In fact, that's one among many reasons we've selected you to lead the rest of your kind in the next step forward." "Aha," I retorted. "So life does have a purpose, at least mine does." Again they shook in robust mirth, upon which the surgeon dropped his drill with a clack upon the translucent floor. One of his assistants quickly snatched it up as I peered down to the level below. That was apparently the UFO's canteen, a la Star Wars. An octopoid life form glanced up at the ceiling from where he was seated upon a beanbag cushion and waved a tentacle in my direction. I waved back, then directed my attention once more to the intergalactic brain manipulator. "So, just what kind of operation have you performed on my brain? I don't feel any different." Upon hearing my question, he cleared his throat and proceeded to explain. "There is a reptilian part of every person's brain that blocks your species from progressing any further than you have at this point in your evolution. Removing a particular chunk of it frees you from the base emotions that often lead to violence, as well as other destructive behaviors, though lesser ones." "You mean like the 7 deadly sins?" I posited. "Precisely," he replied, "which surgical excision will also avert global annihilation, and that's a good thing. And for some reason I have been chosen to be like a New Age Jesus Christ rather than any of the other billions of people on this planet." He grinned broadly at that before correcting me. "Well, Eugene, we prefer a more general term like Avatar to describe your good fortune, but yes, that's an apt reference. Though you know very well such a fellow never existed. He's a composite of earlier legends and wise folks who once walked your planet. But surely there must be many others equally deserving of this fate, if not more so." "Indeed there are, but we have had to settle on something, did we not, in order to get the ball rolling?" "The ball rolling." "The ball rolling, as in a lottery, a gamble, a roll of the dice, and my name came up first?" "Why, yes, Mr. Catalano, that's exactly how it happened. Though instead of any method you just described, we used a random generator in the form of superquantum analog that transcends all space and time. We've run it through countless calculations. It always comes up with Eugene Frank Catalano, born in Brooklyn, New York on July 1, 1950, and who will change his name to Ezekiel Joseph Kralin in 1996. "I will?" I asked in surprise. "Why that name in particular?" "I'm sorry, Mr. Catalano," replied the surgeon, "but the future's not yours to see for some years to come, except for an occasional glimpse of a teensy slice of it now and then." Upon speaking those words, a squat lizard with a neon-pink mohawk and pierced upper lip stepped through the operating room's portal and whispered something into the doctor's ear. It then approached me, gave me a firm, friendly hug without speaking a word. It then suddenly vanished. It was heavily dosed with the scent of patchouli, which made me gag like a mofo. I despise that hippy-dippy stench, and is one of many good reasons I'm at odds with our building's long-term maintenance man, Victor, who for some ungodly reason wears that same offensive scent, stinking up the entire building as a result. My apologies, Mr. Kralin. But our visit is over, as I've just been alerted regarding an emergency from a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And if I don't show up right on time, down to the very second, no sooner, no later, all hell will break loose. I'm sure you mean that literally, I quipped, and then thanked him for the adventure, upon which I suddenly awoke back in that UC Berkeley lounge. Wow, what a daydream, I thought, then noticed 2 items on the coffee table nearby that weren't there before I drifted off into la-la space. One was that slick Krishna publication in magazine format, Back to Godhead. The other was a small paperback entitled The Medieval Roots of Modern Surgery. Then something else remarkable happened sometime later that day. In fact, 2 remarkable things occurred. Around 2 hours after that UFO daydream, I decided to hitchhike on over to San Francisco, being homeless since I departed from my university stomping grounds in Columbia, Missouri, and landed in Baghdaddy by the Bay after a long drive there. Thanks to another student's kindness, it had quickly become my habit to hop back and forth between SF and Berkeley, which both places I enjoyed immensely. But as I strolled toward University Avenue to begin my trek, I thought to myself, I'd sure love to have my diary back, but that seems impossible now. For on my ride to the West Coast, the driver refused to pull over and wait out a thick fog as we approached the East Bay. I begged him to do just that, but he kept saying, in a minute, and next thing you know, his Volkswagen Bug got totaled in a crash with a semi coming in the other direction. Miraculously enough, we both came out relatively unscathed, me with a broken front tooth, he with a damaged foot. And I spent just 1 night at the Highland General Hospital in Oakland. My driver, however, stayed behind in order to have minor surgery on his mangled extremity. But I had left my diary behind, filled with poetry, insights, and brief tales, somewhere in that vehicle, and I didn't have the driver's phone number, address, or know where he was going once released from the hospital, so I wrote it off with a sigh. But right at that moment, I heard a comforting voice that whispered in my ear, "Don't worry about your book. The angels will bring it back to you." I felt relieved to hear those words and stuck out my thumb. It was a balmy, sunny day with a pleasant ocean breeze. A few minutes after standing near that busy intersection, a handsome young black fellow in dreadlocks, about 5'5" in height, approached me with a bright smile and asked, "Mind if I hitch a ride with you?" "Not at all." I grinned back and shook his hand. "My name's Gene. What's yours?" "Angel," he replied, and we engaged in joyful badinage while awaiting our ride across the bay. A charming couple pulled up about 12 minutes later with 2 kids in the back of their van. Once we arrived in San Fran, they dropped us off somewhere in the Mission by Valencia Street. They also gave us each $5. "Where are you going now?" Angel queried. "I'm on my way to the Haight." "Oh, I think I'm going to wander about. It's such a lovely day," I said, and with that, we gave each other a hug and went our separate ways. I decided to hike up 19th Street, a half-block down, and enjoyed all the colorful Edwardian homes and placid ambiance of that neighborhood. Then some tall fellow approached me from several houses up, called out, Gene, I have something of yours." It was my driver from Missouri, who I noticed now walked with a slight limp. "I live right here," he said, pointing 3 houses back on the same block. "I held on to your diary, thought someday we'd meet again and I could return it." And that's how an angel brought it back to me, much to my amazement. Unfortunately, I lost it again several years down the line, but that does not diminish the beauty of my true tale one iota, and those were the 2 remarkable incidents. Meeting someone named Angel just minutes after being informed that the angels would bring the book back to me, then less than an hour later encountering my driver, who held on to it, without either of us knowing where the other was since that accident. What were the odds of that being a mere coincidence? Signed, Eugene Frank Catalano, weaver of tales and lord of the shadows, whose love of blueberry muffins is soon to become legendary. P.S. It was New Year's Day 1973 when I first landed in San Francisco, straight out of the hospital. So the car accident occurred on New Year's Eve. A nice touch to the story, don't you think? My introduction to San Francisco, a new year, a new life, a new world. P.P.S. Happy Age of Miracles and or Aquarius, everyone. Day 1 is tomorrow for this auspicious breakthrough, September 1, 2023, a day none of us will ever forget. In fact, it will be seared into our very engrams for all eternity. But don't worry, it doesn't hurt. It just stings a little now and then when we've had too much coffee.